My husband, the head of people operations, smiled at my boss and casually admitted he'd handed the keys to my company vehicle over to his unemployed sister. He didn't know that smile was the exact moment he lost his six-figure salary, his reputation, and his marriage. He was still checking his fantasy football stats while my boss was effectively sharpening the axe. If you're watching this video, tell me where you're from or what time it is for you. I swear to God, the humidity in that room was always set to a low, sticky 78 degrees, like the air itself was designed to make you irritable. It was Friday, 8:05 a.m., 5 minutes past the start of the senior leadership sync, and I was, for the third time this week, late. I slipped into the only vacant seat, which was, naturally, right next to the two people I was trying to avoid, Evelyn, the director of operations and my direct reporting line, and Oliver, my husband, the head of people ops, and the living, breathing, cedarwood-scented source of my perpetual lateness. "Sorry, traffic was a beast," I muttered, pulling out my slim-profile Lenovo laptop. A pathetic lie. The truth was, I'd been parked 4 blocks away, staring at the meter, trying to decide if the $5 Uber pool had been worth the $20 surge charge just to avoid the argument I knew was waiting at home. But the car, my car, the silver Lexus RX 350 the company gave me for hitting the lead systems engineer promotion 2 years ago, was sitting in our driveway, and I had, yet again, chosen the path of least resistance. Not driving it. Evelyn, with her razor-sharp bob and a penmanship so perfect it was almost intimidating, didn't even look up from her moleskin. She just tapped the screen of her iPad. "Allison, no need to apologize. We're only on the Q3 budget forecasting." The tone was perfectly professional, but the glance she finally threw me was deep and analytical. Evelyn never missed a detail. Never. We slogged through 30 minutes of spreadsheets and acronyms, EBITDA this, burn rate that. My brain was clicking through firewall updates, trying to focus, but the tap-tap-tap of Oliver's custom stylus on his metallic blue iPad was a constant, maddening metronome right next to me. He wasn't taking notes. He was checking his fantasy league. I could see the tiny grid, the names. Gronk's groin was the name of his team, flickering in his peripheral vision. This, by the way, was peak Oliver, completely checked out but making sure he was physically present enough to look important. Then the budget review finally wrapped up and Evelyn cleared her throat. I saw it coming. The pause was too long. The room went silent except for the low hum of the HVAC. "Okay. Systems and infrastructure looks solid, Allison. Great work on the transition to Azure last quarter," Evelyn started, and I relaxed a millimeter. "But a quick administrative point before we break." She finally set her pen down. She folded her hands on the table. "This was never good. I have to ask, Allison, why the consistent taxi expense on your recent T&E reports? I saw 3 Ubers and 2 Lyfts this week alone. Your role requires being available, and the company provides you with a vehicle for exactly that reason." The temperature in the room, I swear, dropped 10 degrees. I was ready with my pre-planned, non-confrontational lie. "Oh, that! I've been having some chronic issue with the transmission. It was making this terrible sound, so I had to put it in the shop for a few weeks to have the dealership look at the differential." It was a decent lie, full of technical terms, and it usually worked on non-technical people. Oliver leaned forward. The sudden movement made his expensive Italian watch, the one I'd bought him for his promotion, clink against the glass table. That smile. That casual, condescending, "I'm fixing this for you, little girl" smile. "Actually, Evelyn, she's exaggerating," Oliver cut in, his voice dripping with that smooth, calculated HR sincerity he used when firing someone. "It's nothing major. Don't worry about the corporate insurance risk. The Lexus is totally fine. It's just a bit of an excess vehicle for us right now, and my sister needed reliable transportation for job interviews in the city. So I lent her the keys for a couple of weeks." He said it like he was announcing he'd bought a new brand of coffee for the break room. "No big deal." just lending out the six-figure asset tied to my employment contract. The silence this time was deafening. You could hear the secretary 2 doors down stapling something. I felt the blood drain out of my face, leaving a cold, tight mask. I didn't even process the absurdity of his admission that he gave the keys to Chloe, his permanently unemployed sister, without asking me, the registered company driver. No. What hit me was the brazenness of the lie he'd set me up for. He'd just made me look like an incompetent liar in front of the single most important person in my career. My voice came out as a strange, high-pitched croak. Oliver, that is absolutely not true. I explicitly told you I needed the car for the regional site visit next Tuesday, and it is not excess. It is assigned to me. Oliver turned his head, his eyes widening in a performance of bewildered innocence that was purely for Evelyn's benefit. He put a hand, a calm, comforting hand, on my arm. I instantly shrugged it off like it was a biting insect. Allison, honey, we discussed this. It's sitting idle in the driveway, he cooed, lowering his voice conspiratorially, yet loud enough for Evelyn and Patrick, my direct supervisor, to hear everything. Chloe just needed it for a few interviews, and you've been taking Ubers anyway. It's a logistical solution, nothing more. Let's not make a fuss over a simple family arrangement, okay? I saw Evelyn's eyes flicker between the two of us. She wasn't looking at me with pity. She was looking at me with data acquisition in her eyes. She was piecing together the last 6 months of my marriage, my job, and Oliver's subtle sabotage, all in that one pregnant moment. My face was burning now, not just from the heat of the room, but from the sudden, stark realization that this wasn't an argument about a car. This was a public exposure of the fundamental toxic imbalance of our relationship. He truly believed he had the right to unilaterally dispose of my professional assets because in his mind, my career was just an extension of his domestic authority. It's not a family arrangement, Oliver, I whispered, my hands trembling under the table. I gripped the aluminum of my laptop so hard I thought the frame would bend. It is company property, assigned to me, and you gave the keys to an unauthorized driver. That is a liability issue, and you know it. You work in HR. Patrick, poor, conflicted Patrick, cleared his throat and tried to pivot the conversation back to the Q3 numbers. So getting back to the cloud migration costs. But Evelyn cut him off with a slow, deliberate shake of her head. No, Patrick, we're not getting back to Q3, Evelyn said, her voice now flat and devoid of any emotion, which was terrifying. She looked straight at Oliver, her focus absolute. Oliver, can you confirm for the room that you, the head of people operations, authorized a non-employee, your sister to be precise, to operate a 6-figure company asset registered under an individual employee's contract? Oliver's smile finally started to crack around the edges. He hadn't expected the boss to double down. He'd expected the smooth evasion, the pivot. Evelyn, with all due respect, this is completely overblown. It's a marital dispute, essentially. Allison is under a lot of stress with the new systems deployment and— Oliver, Evelyn interrupted, her hand chopping the air decisively. I need a simple yes or no. Did you give the keys to Chloe, the unauthorized non-employee? Oliver looked like a hostage trying to read a complicated ransom note. He knew the answer was career suicide, but he was trapped by his own earlier hubris. He stared at me with pure, distilled resentment, realizing I wouldn't cover for him this time. Yes, he finally gritted out. But I can assure you Allison will retrieve it today, and this will be remediated immediately. He was still trying to control the narrative, still trying to put a bow on the burning wreckage. Evelyn didn't even acknowledge his promise. She just looked at me. Allison, you're excused from this meeting. Go to my office, now. It wasn't a question. It was a termination order for the man sitting next to me, delivered through a professional mandate to me. I grabbed my laptop bag, my movements clumsy and stiff, and walked out of the room, leaving Oliver sitting there, his stylist still next to his fantasy football team, oblivious to the fact that his game was over. I could feel the heat of his gaze drilling into my back as I walked away. The tap, tap, tap had stopped. I didn't make it 5 steps past the conference room door before the hand clamped down on my bicep. Not hard enough to bruise. Oliver was never physically abusive, he was far too precise for that, but hard enough to stop me cold in the middle of the carpeted main corridor. The corporate hallway was a muted gray and blue space, usually populated by people clutching thermoses, but now it was empty, feeling like the scene of a crime. "What the hell was that, Allison?" he hissed, his voice dropping to that smooth, dangerous whisper I knew so well. This was his HR voice, the one he used to talk people out of reporting workplace violations, the one that made everything sound like a reasonable discussion when it was actually pure coercion. I tried to pull my arm away. "Get your hand off me, Oliver." "No, you listen to me. You just publicly embarrassed me in front of Patrick and Evelyn. Do you know what that looks like?" He leaned in, his breath smelling faintly of the peppermint gum he always chewed before meetings. "It looks hysterical. It looks unhinged. You made this small private arrangement into a corporate drama, and you threw me under the bus for it. You threw yourself under the bus the second you handed Chloe the keys to a 6-figure company car that isn't yours," I countered, my voice still shaking. I focused on a tiny stain on the carpet, unable to look into the calculated calm of his eyes. "And it's not a small arrangement. It's a massive liability. You, the head of People Ops, are supposed to know that." He tightened his grip just a fraction. "I know a lot of things, Allison. I know that if your reviews look like mine do, stellar, consistent leadership material, then a little favor for my sister is a drop in the bucket. It was a courtesy. I covered for you with the transmission lie because I was protecting you from the optics of having a messy, expensive car repair while you're supposed to be focused on Azure transition. I was trying to help." The gaslighting was so thick it was suffocating. He'd always done this, taken a massive breach of trust, framed it as a benevolent gesture, and then used it to accuse me of ingratitude or hysteria. "You weren't helping me, Oliver. You were treating my promotion, my company assets, and my authority like they were toys you could loan out whenever you needed to placate your family," I spat out. "You called it excess. It's my tool. It's my transportation. It's part of my compensation package for 3 years of 18-hour days, and you didn't even ask." He let out a short, dismissive laugh, a puff of air that was meant to convey absolute incredulity. "Ask? Allison, we are married. We are a unit. What's mine is yours, and what's yours is, well, ours. You take Ubers anyway. Why the sudden obsession with a vehicle you haven't driven in a month? You're fixated on a stupid rental when I'm trying to manage the entire culture of this company, which, by the way, includes your salary." The implied threat hung in the air. "I control the systems that control your money." "It's not a rental, Oliver. It's an asset. And I take Ubers because I refuse to sit in a car for 45 minutes with your sister's half-eaten Big Macs and her vape pen residue on the dashboard. I'm sick of having to clean out a stranger's garbage just to go to work, and I told you 2 weeks ago I needed it back by today." He rolled his eyes dramatically, releasing my arm as if the skin was contaminated. "Oh, here we go. The martyr complex. The great systems engineer. Too good to ride in a car used by a single mom trying to get back on her feet. You're being petty, Allison. Honestly. You're letting the stress of work make you hysterical, and you need to dial it back before you cause a permanent HR issue that even I can't manage." He adjusted the cuff of his Brooks Brothers shirt, running his hands over the expensive fabric as if physically smoothing out the wrinkles I had caused in his perfect day. "You go talk to Evelyn. Apologize for the outburst. Tell her it was a personal matter that got out of hand and that the car will be returned by end of day. I'll call Chloe and we can all pretend this ridiculousness never happened." His entire stance was based on the absolute certainty that I would cave, that I would prioritize his image over my own dignity, just as I had for the last 6 years. He was already turning away, already reaching for his phone to check whatever new notification popped up, probably another update on Gronk's groin. I stood there, watching him walk away. The hallway lights glinted off the polished stone floor, and I felt a switch finally flip. I wasn't scared anymore. I was cold. I was calculated. "Oliver," I called out, not loudly, but with a surprising firmness that made him stop mid-stride. He turned back, a look of impatience etched on his handsome, infuriating face. "What now, Allison?" "I'm not apologizing," I stated, my voice steady for the first time. "And the only HR issue being managed today is the one you created." He just stared at me for a beat, his perfect corporate smile finally melting into a grimace of raw fury. He didn't say another word. He just pivoted and marched straight back toward the conference room doors. I watched him go, then turned and walked toward Evelyn's office, the dread of confronting my boss replaced by a strange, exhilarating sense of righteous, bone-deep anger. I knew I had just crossed a point of no return. Evelyn's office was minimalist and intimidating, like a magazine spread sponsored by efficiency. A single enormous window overlooked the city skyline, but her desk faced inward, toward the core of the building. She was already sitting at her dark walnut desk, having beaten me there by a minute. As I walked in, she didn't look up immediately. She simply reached out a long, manicured hand and clicked the small electronic lock button on her door. The soft thunk of the bolt sliding home was one of the loudest sounds I had ever heard. It felt definitive. She finally looked at me, resting her chin on her steepled fingers. Her expression wasn't angry or sympathetic. It was again purely analytical. "Sit down, Allison," she said, gesturing to one of the two uncomfortable-looking, low-backed leather chairs. I sat. I placed my laptop bag carefully at my feet. My palms were sweating, and I discreetly wiped them on the fabric of my trousers. "Let's dispense with the car," Evelyn began, cutting to the chase like a surgical laser. "It is, as you correctly pointed out, a 6-figure corporate asset and a liability. Oliver's action was grossly out of line, a clear breach of policy, and frankly, a lapse in judgment so severe it puts his professional capabilities into question. Legal has already been looped in, and the car will be recovered today. Oliver is suspended pending a full investigation into his conduct as the head of people operations." I closed my eyes for a brief, dizzying moment. Suspended. It had happened that fast. I opened them and looked at Evelyn. "Thank you, Evelyn. I appreciate your immediate action on that." She waved her hand dismissively. "That's the easy part, Allison. The car is an object. The question is, what objects has he taken from you?" I frowned. "I'm not sure I follow." Evelyn leaned forward and her tone shifted from corporate executive to mentor, but with a darker edge. "I asked you to come in here because I don't believe Oliver's admission was a spontaneous act of marital obliviousness. I believe it was a tactical play." She reached under her desk and pulled out a manila folder, surprisingly thick. She slid it across the desk toward me. The tab read, "Allison Reynolds, Performance Reviews, 2020-2023. "I was curious, Allison," she continued, watching me with unnerving focus. "I looked at your performance reviews for the last 3 years. You are consistently rated meets expectations. Not exceeds, just meets. Which, for a lead systems engineer overseeing a $12 million infrastructure overhaul and a 3-person team, is highly unusual. You're one of the most technically gifted people in this building." I felt a cold shiver run down my spine. I know, I always thought it was... Maybe the company standard was just incredibly high. "No," Evelyn stated flatly. "The company standard is high, but not that high. Look at the data." I opened the folder. Inside were the 3 annual reviews. I flipped to 2021, my name, my role, and then the scores, all 3s on a scale of 5, meets expectations. But then I saw the handwritten comments in the margins, not the formal ones I'd signed off on, but ones scribbled in red ink. Initial recommendation by P. Davies, 5-5, exceeds. HR override note, O. Reynolds, recommend 3-5. Rationale, maintain strict parity for husband-wife employees, avoid optics of nepotism, promote fairness. I felt like someone had punched the air out of my lungs. No way. Yes way, Allison. Oliver has systematically intervened in your reviews for 3 straight years. Every time Patrick rated you exceeds expectations, which he did every single time. Oliver, as head of people operations, used the optics of nepotism as the official justification to knock your score down to meets expectations. I looked at the notes again. The handwriting was neat, authoritative, and utterly devoid of mercy. Avoid optics of nepotism. He's using the same excuse for the car, I whispered, the irony like bile in my throat. Optics of nepotism. Exactly. It's his personal catchphrase for controlling your career trajectory, Evelyn confirmed, tapping the file. If you score exceeds, you become eligible for promotion and a significant bonus. If you are consistently meets, you stay exactly where you are. Oliver ensured you were professionally capped. Your compensation has been artificially suppressed for 36 months. I remembered every time I had asked Oliver why I hadn't been considered for the director track. Every time he'd patted my head and said, "Honey, you're too valuable in your current role. Director work is just meetings. You love the code." Every lie, every condescending dismissal suddenly took on a sinister corporate clarity. Evelyn then pushed a second, thinner file across the desk. This one was bound with a thick rubber band. Now, this is where legal comes in. Oliver's actions constitute several things: fraud, interference with employment contracts, and arguably economic abuse, given his concurrent position as your husband and head of HR. But more pressingly, you, Allison Reynolds, are due roughly $45,000 in suppressed bonus payouts and salary discrepancy over the last 3 years. I stared at the number. $45,000, not just stolen from my pocket, but stolen from my effort. Evelyn leaned back, folding her hands again. My job is to protect the company. Oliver has violated multiple clauses, opened us up to litigation, and frankly, embarrassed the entire leadership team. His suspension is non-negotiable and will likely turn into termination by Monday. But your job, Allison, is to protect yourself. She slid a business card across the desk. It wasn't a company card. It was thick, cream-colored stock. Catherine Vance, Eskerian. Family law and litigation. Call her. Tell her I sent you, and be prepared to prove that this systemic suppression of your career was a deliberate act, not just an accidental consequence of a marriage. You need the emails, the documented conversations, and everything connecting his HR role to his optics reasoning. I finally picked up the performance review file, the paper feeling heavy, toxic. The weight of 3 years of professional stagnation, all traced back to the man I woke up next to every morning. I don't know if I have that kind of documentation, Evelyn, I admitted, my voice hoarse. He's head of HR. He has access to all the system logs, all the archived emails. He can delete anything he wants. Evelyn's face remained neutral, but a tiny flicker of respect passed through her eyes. Then you start with what you have, Allison. You start now, and you don't tell him a single thing about what we just discussed. We locked down his network access at 2 p.m. You have 3 hours to find your smoking gun. I stood up, gripping the manila folder and the lawyer's card. The air in the room felt thick with strategy, betrayal, and the faint, cold smell of a corporate execution. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. I walked toward the door, my hand reaching for the metal handle. One more thing, Allison. Evelyn said just as my fingers touched the cool metal. "When you leave here, go straight to the garage. Your car is parked in the executive reserved spot, Slot A. Security retrieved it 30 minutes ago from your sister-in-law's apartment complex. It was detailed immediately. The keys are at the front desk. Drive home. Don't take an Uber." I looked back at her, a silent thank you that felt inadequate. Evelyn simply gave me the smallest, almost imperceptible nod. I unlocked the door and walked out, leaving the toxic air of the room behind, but carrying the heavy realization of my husband's systematic sabotage out into the harsh, fluorescent light of the hallway. The realization that Oliver was already suspended and potentially terminated by Monday didn't bring me relief. It brought a massive spike of adrenaline mixed with sheer terror. I had exactly 3 hours before the official IT lockdown on his HR account. If he saw the warning signs, which being head of People Ops he was trained to see, he could wipe everything. My hands were shaking too badly to work. I couldn't stay in my cube. I needed a neutral zone, a place where I could organize the next 3 years of my life and professional reputation without the fear of him walking up behind me, whispering another threat or another lie. I grabbed my laptop, my phone, and the manila folder and walked right out of the building. I didn't stop to talk to Patrick, who shot me a look of complex distress from his office door. I didn't look at the cluster of HR employees who were clearly gossiping near the water cooler. I just moved. The closest place I could think of was a chain coffee shop 3 blocks down, the one with the horrible, bitter espresso and the uncomfortable wooden chairs. It was perfect. I was invisible there. I sat down at a small table by the window, ordered a black Americano so hot it burned my fingers, and opened my laptop. The silence of the cafe, punctuated by the rhythmic whir of the espresso machine and the muffled music, was a welcome relief from the office's tense atmosphere. Then my phone exploded. Not literally, but the vibration on the cheap laminate table was violent. I had about 50 notifications. I quickly flipped the phone to Do Not Disturb and reviewed the lock screen. The sheer volume of incoming messages was paralyzing. They were all from Oliver. Text 1, 11:05 a.m. "What the hell did you say to Evelyn? Call me now." Text 2, 11:06 a.m. "My account is locked. This is you, isn't it? You set me up. I swear to God, Allison, you are going to regret this." Text 3, 11:10 a.m. "I am trying to manage this. Tell Evelyn it was a huge misunderstanding. I'll make sure you get the director promotion, I promise. Just fix this." Text 4, 11:12 a.m. "Call my mother. She's distraught. You're destroying our family for a car." Text 5, 11:15 a.m. "I need the password to the home equity line of credit. I can't get access. Are you trying to lock me out of the money?" His messages started as threats, shifted to negotiation, and ended with a clear revelation of his actual priority: money. Not me. Not his job. The joint accounts. I powered the phone off entirely and took a long, burning sip of the Americano. I couldn't deal with him yet. I had to focus on the digital archaeological dig Evelyn tasked me with. I needed the emails that would prove deliberate malice, not just a clumsy mistake. I knew he'd wiped the main HR server, but he didn't know how I worked. I opened my personal email, an old Gmail account I used for technical forums and contractor work. I started searching for any correspondence with Patrick about performance reviews from 2020, 2021, and 2022. I never printed emails. I archived them. The emails with Patrick were vague and professional, but the timeline was illuminating. Sep 20, 2021, 10:45 a.m. Patrick to Allison. "Great work on the data center migration. Draft review is attached. I think you'll be happy with the rating. Congrats." Attached file, review, draft Allison, 2021.doc. I opened the attachment. It clearly read, overall rating, 5.5, exceeds expectations. Sep 20, 2021, 2:00 p.m. Patrick to Allison. Allison, quick note. Oliver mentioned we need to align the language on a few of the metrics for standardization. The official rating will reflect what we discussed with HR. No worries. The official rating I signed 2 days later, 3.5, meets expectations. The second email was the smoking gun. It clearly referenced Oliver's intervention and the need to align the language. It wasn't direct proof of his optics justification, but it was direct proof of a conversation between Patrick and Oliver that led to a downgrade of my rating within a few hours. I immediately forwarded the 2 emails to Catherine Vance, the lawyer, with a subject line: Evidence, Initial Performance Review Interference, 2021. I searched for the other 2 years. The patterns were identical. A draft review from Patrick rating me exceeds, followed hours later by a cryptic note about alignment or standardization, and then the final meets expectations review. 3 years, 3 systematic professional decapitations. I leaned back, finally allowing myself to process the totality of the betrayal. It wasn't just the car. It wasn't just the money. It was the years of carefully managed doubt, the way I'd questioned my own abilities, the way I'd apologized for not being director material, the way I'd internalized his critique that I was too detail-oriented and not big picture enough. He had constructed a ceiling over my head and made me believe I was the one who built it. My stomach was twisting. I reached for the croissant I'd bought, a flaky, butter-soaked crescent that now tasted like ash. I pushed it away. I felt a visceral need to get away from anything that reminded me of our life. The coffee shop felt too close to work. I needed a sanctuary. I needed Rebecca. I powered my phone back on and immediately blocked Oliver's number. Not just the known one, but the burner number he always used for discretion when calling contractors. I sent a single text to my best friend, to Rebecca. I need you. Now. Total nuclear meltdown. Everything is a lie. Do not call me. I'm taking a cab to your place. Get wine. I closed my laptop, grabbed my bag, and walked out of the cafe, leaving the half-drunk Americano and the untouched croissant behind. I knew the moment I walked into Rebecca's house, I would finally be able to articulate the complete, ugly truth of my marriage. I was crammed into the back of a beat-up Toyota Camry Uber, the kind that smelled faintly of old pizza and had a dangling air freshener shaped like a pine tree. I had about 20 minutes until I got to Rebecca's. The adrenaline was still pumping, and I was too keyed up to just sit and look out the window. I had a final piece of business to attend to before the therapy session started. I unblocked my sister-in-law Chloe's number. I had deliberately kept my exchange with her minimal over the last few weeks. It was always, "Hey, when can I get the Lexus back?" And her response, "Oh, tomorrow, promise. The interviews are just all over town. So helpful." Thanks, Allison. But now, knowing the depths of Oliver's deception, I saw her entitlement not as an annoying habit, but as a co-conspirator. I checked my messages. She had texted me 6 times in the last hour. Chloe, 11:45 a.m. Allison, Oliver is flipping out. Says his office is locking him out of his email. What did you say to them? Chloe, 11:50 a.m. This is so unfair. He was just trying to help me. You know how hard it is to get a job without a professional vehicle. Chloe, 12:00 p.m. I swear to God, if I miss this interview at the boutique downtown, I'm telling Mom you're the reason Oliver is getting fired. Chloe, 12:05 p.m. OMG, I just saw an email. They sent a tow truck to my apartment complex. They stole the car. You are literally the most selfish person I know. You can't let me have one nice thing? Chloe, 12:15 p.m. I'm stranded. I missed the interview. Thanks for ruining my life, Allison. I'm calling a lawyer. I stared at the last text. I'm calling a lawyer. The audacity was almost comical. She was going to call a lawyer because the rightful owner of a borrowed asset had recovered it. I took a deep breath. I needed to respond, not to engage in a typical family argument, but to deliver a final surgical strike that clarified the new reality. To Chloe. Chloe, 2 points. 1. The car was not yours. It was company property, assigned to me. It was not yours to use. 2. The car was not stolen. It was recovered by corporate security from the property of an unauthorized, uninsured driver. If you continue to harass me, I will be forwarding your texts to corporate legal, and they will be contacting you directly regarding the usage of the vehicle and any mileage violations you incurred. The car is now back at the office. Please forward your mileage log and gas receipts to me by end of day. I sent it and immediately felt a rush of vindication. No apologies, no emotion, just cold, hard corporate language. Her response was immediate and filled with misspelled rage. Chloe, 12:20 p.m. You are a bitch, a cold-hearted, greedy bitch. You've always hated me because Oliver likes me more than you. You think you're so much better than the rest of us with your fancy job and your computer code. I was about to block her again when a notification popped up on my phone, an email I had been CC'd on from Evelyn's assistant. The subject line was, Legal Demand Immediate Return of Corporate Asset, Lexus RX 350, tag XW5T4G. I opened it. It was a single-page PDF attachment from the legal department, addressed to Oliver, Chloe, and their mother. It was written in that beautiful, brutal language only corporate lawyers use. This letter serves as a formal notification of the immediate repossession of the above-referenced asset. The asset was located and secured at Chloe's apartment complex address. Any further attempts by non-registered employees or their family members to take possession of, operate, or interfere with the asset will result in immediate legal action, including potential charges of grand theft auto and civil liability. All mileage, fuel, and maintenance costs incurred during the period of unauthorized use will be invoiced to the parties responsible. A full accounting will follow. Cease and desist all contact regarding this asset immediately. I swear, I almost cheered in the back of the filthy cab. The beauty of reading the legal jargon, unauthorized, uninsured driver, grand theft auto, was more satisfying than any amount of yelling. The company wasn't just taking the car back, they were officially placing Oliver and Chloe on notice. I took a screenshot of the entire email, header, legal text, and all, and sent it to Chloe with a single line. To Chloe, you may want to speak to Oliver about the invoice. I then blocked her number again, permanently this time. The cab pulled up to Rebecca's brownstone just as I locked my phone. I paid the driver, the small moment of legal satisfaction, a brief, exhilarating high before the emotional crash I knew was coming. Rebecca's place smelled like old books, fresh laundry, and the faintest hint of gin, my kind of sanctuary. I stumbled inside, dropping my heavy laptop bag by the door. Rebecca, in her comfy, oversized college hoodie and ripped jeans, looked up from the kitchen island where she was already uncorking a bottle of cheap but comforting Pinot Grigio. She didn't ask any questions. She just looked at my face, which was probably a perfect, terrified white, and handed me the glass. In the shower, in the tub, or on the couch? She asked, knowing the 3 stages of my meltdown protocol. Couch, I mumbled, sinking onto the battered olive green velvet sofa that had been in her family for 3 generations. I took a massive gulp of wine. It was cold and acidic, exactly what I needed. The wine is crap, but it's fast. Start talking, she commanded, sitting cross-legged facing me. The perfect listener. She'd always been my rock, a high school math teacher who could explain the chaos of the universe better than anyone I knew. I started with the car, the easy part, the boardroom ambush, Oliver's casual admission, Evelyn's surgical response. But by the time I got to Evelyn pulling out the performance review file, I couldn't hold it together anymore. He suppressed me, Bex, I whispered, tears finally escaping. For 3 years. Every promotion, every bonus, every time Patrick tried to advocate for me, Oliver used his HR power to knock me down to meet expectations, all in the name of avoiding the optics of nepotism. But it wasn't about the company. It was about making sure I never outpaced him. Rebecca's face, which had been registering appropriate shock over the car, hardened into cold fury. She put her glass down on a coaster with a decisive thunk. "Oh, Allison, you can't be serious. He flat out sabotaged your career?" "Systematically. Evelyn showed me the handwritten notes, the override, the lie I just told the entire leadership team about the car being in the shop. He let me tell that lie, knowing he was about to publicly contradict me and make me look like a hysterical idiot." I started pacing in the small living room, the memory of that hall confrontation still vivid. He wasn't helping me, Oliver. He was making sure I stayed small enough that he never felt threatened. He controlled the narrative of my entire professional self-worth. Rebecca just listened, letting me cycle through the shame, the rage, and the terrifying clarity. "Look, I told you 5 years ago when he tried to get you to wear those ridiculous non-corporate pastels that he was trying to sand down your edges. This is just the corporate version of that." "The frog in boiling water," I said, sinking back onto the couch. That's what I realized. It wasn't one big explosion. It was a series of tiny erosions. He'd criticized my code late at night, saying it was too complicated. He'd asked me to decline invitations to company dinners because he felt awkward when people asked me technical questions he couldn't understand. He called my professional success an unnecessary complication in our home life. We went through the catalog of small betrayals. The time he unilaterally changed the locks on the home office door and told me he needed privacy to manage the HR databases. The time he threw away a box of my highly specialized technical books, claiming they were dust collectors, and he needed the shelf space for his golf trophies. "Remember the San Diego opportunity?" I asked, gulping down more wine. 3 years ago, when the company was moving the West Coast HQ and I put in for the transfer, I told you I got rejected. I thought it was because my team couldn't afford to lose me. "Yeah, I remember. You were crushed." "Oliver was the one who intercepted the internal email," I said, pointing at my head. "He was the one who sent the formal rejection on my behalf. He was the head of people ops. He just clicked decline on my transfer request and then told me I was too valuable to move." Rebecca just stared at me, the wine glass held suspended halfway to her mouth. "Allison, that's not just sabotage. That's professional kidnapping." "I know. I didn't find the evidence yet, but I bet it's in his emails, the one place I can't get to easily." Okay. We're getting ahead of ourselves," Rebecca said, taking charge. "The good news is Evelyn has your back, and you have a lawyer. The marriage is over, Allison. You know that, right? The line isn't just crossed. It's obliterated. It's vaporized, Bex. He is my enemy, my literal professional enemy. I just need to figure out how to untangle the finances before he cleans us out." I looked at the clock. 1:15 p.m. The HR lockdown was at 2:00 p.m. I had less than an hour of potential data integrity left. The financial records were my only other immediately accessible data point. "I need your laptop, and I need privacy," I announced, standing up. "I need to check the joint accounts. I need to see what else he's been running in my name." Rebecca nodded immediately. "My MacBook is on the kitchen counter. Go for it, and I'll open a better bottle of wine. You've earned it." Rebecca's kitchen was bright and airy, a sharp contrast to the corporate dungeon I'd just fled. I sat at the counter, her silver MacBook Pro open in front of me. I logged into the joint banking portal. Our primary account was predictable. 2 salaries in, mortgage payment out, utility bills, and the usual high-end expenditures Oliver deemed necessary for his image. Expensive restaurant tabs, golf club fees, the occasional exorbitant clothing purchase. It was the credit cards that worried me. We had 2 joint Visas and 1 joint Amex. They were all paid off monthly from the main account. Oliver insisted on keeping everything joint for the best interest rates. I now knew the real reason, to give him access to my credit line. I clicked on the summary page for our Amex Platinum card. The balance was $14,000, which was normal for us. I clicked on the recent transactions. There was a charge from 3 days ago that made my stomach clench. Date, 12/09/2025. Vendor Zenith Consulting Group. Amount $4,500. I frowned. Zenith Consulting Group. What the hell is that? I clicked the little plus sign next to the transaction for more detail. The purchase category was professional services. I searched my email for Zenith Consulting. Nothing. I searched Oliver's burner email, the one I used to have access to. Nothing. He was clearly using an account I didn't know about. Bex, come look at this, I called out. Rebecca came over, leaning over my shoulder. $4,500? For what? Did he hire a decorator? He would have put that on the visa. This is different. This is professional, and I've never heard of them. I minimized the bank page and Googled Zenith Consulting Group. It was a small, high-end firm specializing in executive transition and reputation management. Oh my God, I breathed. He was preparing to leave. This isn't about reputation management for the company. This is his reputation management. He was setting up his parachute. But there was something else. I navigated back to the bank portal and pulled up the PDF statement for the last 6 months of the Amex. I was scrolling through the legalese when I saw a separate tab labeled Open Accounts in a smaller font at the very bottom of the page. I clicked it, and my vision swam. Listed under the joint Amex Platinum were 3 other accounts: Allison Reynolds, Supplementary Platinum, Joint. Okay. Oliver Reynolds, Business Gold, Joint. Okay. Allison Reynolds, Executive Line of Credit, $150,000 limit, non-primary cardholder listed. Not okay. I never opened an executive line of credit, ever. I clicked on the third account and pulled up the original application PDF, which was archived right there on the bank's server. Borrower name, Allison Reynolds. Social Security number, my SSN borrower signature, a jagged, rushed signature that was clearly not mine. Date signed, June 14, 2023. I stared at the signature. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I traced the screen with my finger. It was too thick, too hurried to be mine. It was Oliver's familiar, loopy, yet aggressive handwriting from his HR internal memos. He'd forged my signature. Rebecca let out a gasp beside me. He took out a $150,000 line of credit in your name? He needed my SSN because I have the highest credit score, I explained, my voice flat with shock. He knew I would be the primary signatory, and he forged my name. He was planning for his professional collapse. He needed a cash reserve, and he put it on my credit profile. I scrolled down to the usage. The balance was currently $5,000. Not huge, but the fact that it existed was criminal. There was one big withdrawal 2 weeks ago for $20,000, which was paid back 3 days later. He's been testing it, I whispered. He took out $20,000, paid it back instantly to make sure the system worked, and then probably used that $5,000 for something he couldn't expense. I was already frantically downloading the PDF of the forged application, the last 6 months of the Amex statements, and the Zenith Consulting transaction details. This is fraud, Allison. Financial fraud, Rebecca said, her voice tight with disbelief. You have to call the lawyer right now. This is a felony. I know, but I need one more thing. I knew where he kept the physical passwords for the shared accounts, the ones he only ever gave me when a monthly bill was due. They were written on a small blue sticky note, folded and tucked into the back of his leather wallet, which he always left in the center console of his personal car, a 4-year-old BMW 5 Series. His wallet was in the car, which was now sitting at our house, awaiting his suspended from work return. He's going to be home soon, I said, looking at the clock. 1:40 p.m. I need to beat him there. Just as I was about to close Rebecca's laptop, the phone rang. A strange, unfamiliar number from a 415 area code. San Francisco. Oliver had family friends there, and he often used a cheap VoIP burner when he didn't want the call traceable to his corporate lines. I put it on speaker, and Rebecca leaned in. Hello, I said, trying to keep my voice neutral. Allison, it's Oliver. Don't you dare hang up on me. His voice was ragged, completely unlike his HR baritone. He sounded like he was on the verge of a full public breakdown. "I have 2 minutes, Oliver. I'm busy." Busy? Busy destroying my life? "Allison, I'm suspended. I got an email from IT telling me my access is revoked." "What did you tell Evelyn? You went in there and poisoned her against me, didn't you? After everything I've done for you." "Oh, you mean like forging my signature on a $150,000 line of credit, Oliver?" "Was that one of the things you did for me?" I shot back, watching Rebecca's eyes widen in surprise. The line went silent for a moment. He was stunned. He hadn't expected me to find that so quickly. When he spoke again, his voice had changed completely. It was now soft, tremulous, and laced with theatrical tears. The pity play. "Allison, baby, please listen to me. That line of credit, that was for us. I took that out when you were so stressed with the Azure transition. I wanted us to have a buffer, a getaway fund. I signed for you because you were too busy, and I didn't want you to worry about the paperwork. I was trying to protect our future, our family's security. You are completely misconstruing this, and it breaks my heart that you think I would ever hurt you." He was a master manipulator. He could pivot from explosive rage to weeping victimhood in seconds. It was a weapon he had used on me 100 times. "You didn't sign it because I was busy, Oliver. You signed it because you knew if you told me the truth, I would never, ever authorize a 5-figure withdrawal for your executive transition plan," I said, keeping my voice steady. "You were setting up your escape route, and I found the emails. The ones where you told Patrick to downgrade my reviews to avoid the optics of nepotism. All 3 years. I have them, Oliver. Evelyn has them." The facade crumbled instantly. The soft, wounded voice vanished, replaced by a venomous snarl. "You manipulative bitch," he spat. "You think you're clever? You think you can just burn my career to the ground and walk away clean? You are nothing without me, Allison. I am the only reason you even have that job. I gave you the networking, the connections. You're just a gifted coder who would be stuck in a basement somewhere without my influence. I was lead systems engineer before I met you, Oliver, and I'll be VP when I leave you. You were the only thing holding me back." The line crackled with his pure, unadulterated fury. "I'm coming home. I'm giving you 5 minutes to transfer half of the retirement funds into my separate account, or I'm wiping the entire joint bank account. I know the password, Allison. I'm giving you a chance to be reasonable." This was the final, desperate threat, the nuclear button. I felt myself tense up, the years of programmed compliance kicking in. He was a professional in this game. He knew how to find the pressure points, but before I could even formulate a weak answer, Rebecca reached over, took the phone off the counter, and spoke directly into the speaker. "You listen to me, Oliver." Rebecca's voice was calm, deep, and utterly terrifying in its maternal conviction. "I'm Rebecca. I'm a high school math teacher, and I teach 15-year-olds about logic every day. The logic of your situation is this. You just admitted to financial fraud and career sabotage, and you followed it up with a direct threat of financial terrorism against my friend. I'm recording this call. Allison is not transferring a single penny to you. She is going to the police with the forged documents, and she is going to take everything she is legally due. You are a small, petty, and deeply criminal man. Hang up and call your lawyer. You're going to need him." She didn't wait for his response. She just hit the end call button and tossed the phone onto the couch cushion. I stared at her. My breath held. "Bex, you didn't have to do that." "Yes, I did," she said, her face flushed with protective anger. "He needed to hear the sound of someone who isn't afraid of him, and you need to go get that sticky note, now, before he gets home and shreds it." I didn't end up going home. Rebecca was right. The moment I set foot on the property, Oliver would be waiting, either with his pathetic, tearful act or with his full-blown, terrifying rage. And either way, the moment would be lost. The house was his battlefield. Instead, I called Evelyn's mobile number, using a prepaid burner phone Rebecca keeps for emergencies. "It's Allison," I said immediately. "I can't go home. He's making threats, and I've uncovered evidence of financial fraud, a forged line of credit in my name." Evelyn's voice was sharp and immediate. "Stay where you are, Allison. Do not engage. Our security team confirmed he's still at the house. He's suspended. He's not supposed to be there. But we won't escalate a domestic situation. Get back to the office now. The security team will meet you." "The office?" "Yes. You said he wiped the server logs. We need to secure the physical assets you have, and you need a safe space. I've told security you have proprietary information. It's the only way to get you back in safely." I grabbed my bag, thanked Rebecca with a ferocious hug, and got into another Uber, telling the driver to take me back to corporate HQ. This was the walk of war. The minute I walked through the sliding glass doors of the massive glass lobby, I felt the difference. The lobby security guard, Jerry, who usually gave me a quick, friendly nod, looked at me with palpable pity and fear. "Ms. Reynolds," he said, his voice lowered to a conspiratorial whisper, "Mr. Oliver is a topic of conversation. The entire HR floor is in lockdown. We have 2 security personnel waiting to escort you to Ms. Evelyn's floor." "Thank you, Jerry." The elevator ride up was agonizingly slow. I was accompanied by 2 men in muted gray suits, corporate security, not local police. They weren't there to arrest anyone. They were there to protect the company's assets, which at the moment included me, my evidence, and my integrity. When the elevator doors opened on the 18th floor, the atmosphere was thick, silent, and electric. The lights were on, but the usual buzz of activity was gone. People were at their desks, but the air was saturated with whispers and sidelong glances. I was the subject of the corporate spectacle, the quiet chaos of a company absorbing a senior executive's self-immolation. As I walked down the long corridor toward Evelyn's office, escorted by 2 security guards, the whispers became audible. "She's the one." They said he's totally out. Can you believe the HR guy gave his sister the company car? I heard she found out he was tanking her salary. The faces of the HR department were the worst. I saw the stunned, pale face of one of Oliver's young administrative assistants, Sarah, whom he constantly flirted with and berated. She looked at me with a mixture of terror and dawning realization. The realization that her toxic boss was finally gone, and the one who brought him down was not a man from a rival firm, but his quiet systems engineer wife. I kept my head held high, looking straight ahead. My heart was pounding, but I projected a cold, unflinching facade of professional resolve. I was no longer Allison, the soft-spoken wife. I was Allison, the lead systems engineer, here to protect my data and execute my emergency plan. We passed Patrick's office. He stepped out immediately. "Allison, wait," he said, ignoring the security guards. He looked like he hadn't slept in a week. "I can't stop, Patrick. I'm meeting with Evelyn." "I know. Look, I want you to know," he began, his voice breaking. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. The shame on his face was enough. I was pressured. I was coerced. "I'm so sorry." I nodded quickly, a sharp single movement of my head. I didn't absolve him, but I acknowledged his confession. I finally reached Evelyn's closed door. The security guard knocked once, and Evelyn's voice, as steady as ever, said, "Come in." I stepped inside and the door closed behind me, shutting out the whispers and the drama. Evelyn was on the phone, speaking in rapid, low tones with her lawyer. She gave me a quick, reassuring wave and pointed me toward the visitors' seating area, where a small, covered plate of fruit and water had been laid out. The silence was a balm. I sat there for maybe 5 minutes, finally exhaling, when there was a soft, tentative knock on the office door. Evelyn paused her conversation and frowned. "Yes?" The door cracked open, and Victoria stood there. Victoria, my rival project manager. a woman I considered my professional nemesis, a person I believed actively disliked me and undercut my team whenever possible. She was always perfectly dressed in aggressively bright colors, and she always spoke with a condescending precision that grated on my nerves. Evelyn ignored Victoria and looked straight at me. She was pale, and her aggressively cheerful demeanor was entirely absent. "No, I need 5 minutes with Allison, alone. Please, Evelyn. This can't wait." Evelyn looked at me, raising a skeptical eyebrow. I nodded. Something in Victoria's face told me this wasn't about a project deadline. Evelyn sighed, stood up, and walked to the door. 5 minutes. Sarah will be right outside. I'm taking a coffee break. Lock the door when you're done." She walked out, pulling the door shut behind her. Victoria locked the door immediately and turned to face me. She didn't sit down. She paced, clutching her iPhone like a weapon. "Look, Allison, I know you hate me. I know you think I've been a pain in your ass for the last 4 years, Victoria began, her voice low and frantic. "And you're right, I have, but not because of you, because of Oliver." I just stared at her, the sudden shift in atmosphere almost dizzying. "Oliver?" "Yes, Oliver." "The snake. When I started here 4 years ago, I was gunning for the systems lead job. You had it, and I was going to try to take it," Victoria admitted, her eyes blazing. "But then Oliver pulled me aside. He was in HR, remember? He told me that you were unstable, that you had personal issues, and that I needed to watch my back." I felt a cold pressure on my chest. "What did he say?" "He said you were prone to hysterical outbursts and paranoia. He told me that the only reason you were still in the job was his management of your mental health. He told me that you thought I was plotting against you. He told me to be competitive but passive-aggressive. He said, and I quote, 'Just keep her off balance, Victoria. She'll burn out on her own.'" It was the other side of the optics coin. For Evelyn, he made me seem professionally incompetent. For my peers, he made me seem mentally unstable, justifying my low performance reviews and isolating me from potential allies. He told me to question your code in meetings, to subtly suggest your project timelines were unrealistic, Victoria confessed, her voice thick with self-reproach. He promised me that when you finally cracked, he'd give me your job, provided I stayed quiet and kept the pressure on. He created a completely manufactured rivalry between us, Allison. The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. Victoria wasn't my enemy. She was another one of Oliver's victims, a professional pawn he was using to keep me distracted and stressed. He had been pitting us against each other for years, burning our professional energy on a rivalry that wasn't real, just to keep us from collaborating and becoming a real threat to his authority. The late-night emails where I caught you changing my access rights, that was him, wasn't it? I asked, finally understanding the years of tiny, inexplicable annoyances. Victoria nodded quickly, her eyes welling up. "Yes. He told me you asked him to put a bug in the code that would make your team's deployment fail so you could look like the hero when you fixed it. He told me you were trying to make the company look bad and that I was the loyalist who had to fix it for him. He made me think I was protecting the company, Allison, not hurting you." She reached into her phone and quickly pulled up a text message. She held it out to me. "Oliver, 6 months ago." "Victoria, excellent work destabilizing the systems team's confidence. A little friction keeps everyone focused on the process, not the politics. I'll make sure your next bonus reflects your discretion." The text was simple, direct, and devastating, destabilizing the systems team's confidence. He wasn't just suppressing me, he was poisoning the entire department's well. "I am so sorry, Allison," Victoria said, putting the phone down. "I feel sick. I spent 4 years doing the bidding of a manipulator, believing I was getting ahead when all I was doing was helping him hurt a good person. I just had to tell you the truth before he tries to spin this. We weren't rivals. We were his distraction." I stood up, walked over to Victoria, and did the only thing that felt right. I reached out and put my hand on her shoulder. The truce was accepted. "Victoria, thank you. This information is key," I said. "He used his position to play both of us. But that ends now." "What can I do?" she whispered, her voice now raw with an eagerness to make amends. I looked at the text message still on her phone screen, the one proving his malicious intent to destroy team cohesion. "Did you keep all of your communications with him, Victoria? Texts, emails, anything that proves he gave you directives to sabotage my team?" "Everything," she confirmed. "I'm a pack rat with evidence." "I'm an engineer. I keep data." "Then I need you to forward it all to my lawyer, Catherine Vance, and I need you to be ready to tell this exact story to the company's internal investigation team. Can you do that?" Victoria looked at me, her shoulders straightening. The competitive fire was still there, but now it was directed at the true enemy. "Yes, I can burn him to the ground for you, Allison. I'm ready." I nodded. The evidence was stacking up: forged signature, suppressed reviews, coerced sabotage. The only thing missing was the direct email evidence of the optics justification that he'd wiped from the live HR server. I looked at my watch. 2:15 p.m., his network access was completely locked down. The server was wiped. Now it was time to move on to my only remaining forgotten asset, the cold storage. I left Evelyn's office with Victoria's promise of evidence burning a hole in my pocket, but I wasn't done collecting receipts. I needed to face the man who had actually signed the papers that stagnated my career for 3 years, Patrick. His office door was ajar, a sliver of light cutting across the dim hallway. I didn't knock. I just pushed it open. Patrick was sitting at his desk, head in his hands, staring at a framed photo of his golden retriever. He looked like a man who had been waiting for the executioner. "Allison," he said, sitting up too quickly, knocking over a lukewarm cup of Dunkin' coffee. Brown liquid sloshed onto a stack of invoices. He grabbed a napkin, dabbing at it frantically. I was hoping you'd come by, or maybe I was dreading it. I don't know." I closed the door behind me and sat in the chair across from him. I didn't say anything at first. I just let the silence stretch, heavy and uncomfortable, forcing him to fill it. "I know what you saw in Evelyn's office," he started, his voice cracking. "The rating overrides. The comments." "Why, Patrick?" I asked, my voice quieter than I expected. "I worked 18-hour days for the Azure migration. I fixed the catastrophic server failure last Christmas while you were in Cabo. I saved this department 3 separate times, and every year you looked me in the eye, told me I was doing great, and then signed a piece of paper that said I was average. Why?" He slumped back in his chair, the fight draining out of him. He looked small. "Because he made it impossible not to. You have to understand, Allison, Oliver wasn't just HR, he was the gatekeeper. 2 years ago, when I tried to push for your exceeds rating, he called me into his office. He didn't yell. He was friendly. Too friendly." Patrick rubbed his face, his skin looking gray under the fluorescent lights. He brought up my daughter's internship application. He mentioned how competitive the program was that year. Then he pivoted, smooth as silk, to your review. He said, "Patrick, we have to be careful about optics. If Allison gets a top-tier bonus and a promotion while I'm overseeing payroll, people will talk. They'll say it's favoritism. They'll say you're trying to curry favor with HR by bumping up the boss's wife. It could look bad for you." I felt sick. Oliver hadn't just manipulated the system, he had blackmailed my manager using his own child's future. "So you traded my career for your daughter's internship?" "It wasn't that explicit," Patrick protested, though he couldn't meet my eyes. It was subtle, implied. But the message was clear. Help him manage his wife's ego. That's what he called it, your ego, and my life would be easy. Fight him, and things would get complicated. I'm a coward, Allison. I know that. But he made me believe I was protecting the department from scrutiny. He opened his desk drawer and pulled out a thumb drive, a small silver SanDisk. "I kept my own records," he whispered, sliding it across the desk. These are the original drafts of your reviews, the ones I wrote before our alignment meetings, and the emails he sent me afterwards, thanking me for seeing the bigger picture. It's all there. The timestamps prove he forced the changes. I picked up the drive. It felt cold and light, but it carried the weight of my vindication. "You're going to have to testify to this, Patrick," I said, standing up. "When the lawyers come, you can't be a coward anymore." He looked up at me, his eyes wet. "I know, I'm ready. I'm sorry, Allison. I really am." I walked out without forgiving him. Forgiveness was for later. Right now, I needed ammunition. I was heading back to my desk to back up my local files when my phone buzzed. It was Evelyn. "Get back to my office now." Her voice wasn't calm anymore. It was tight, clipped. The voice of a captain realizing the ship has a hole in the hull. I ran. I didn't care about the no running in the hallways rule. I sprinted past the break room, past the stunned HR staff, and burst into Evelyn's office. She was standing behind her desk, staring at her monitors. Her IT director, Marcus, was typing furiously on a keyboard, sweat beading on his forehead. "What happened?" I asked, breathless. "He wiped it," Marcus said without stopping. "The HR server, the communication logs, the archived emails between him and the managers regarding performance reviews. It's gone." "How?" I demanded. "You said you were locking him out at 2 p.m. "We did," Evelyn said, slamming her hand on the desk. "But Oliver, that son of a bitch, had a scheduled task running on his machine, a dead man's switch. It triggered a script the moment his account permissions were altered. It wasn't a hack. It was an automated purge command he must have set up months ago as a failsafe." "He knew," I whispered. "He knew eventually he'd get caught, and he built a trapdoor." "We have the metadata," Marcus said, his voice frantic. "We know files existed, but the content? The actual text of the emails where he explicitly mentions optics? It's overwritten. Zeros and ones. Digital slush." My stomach dropped through the floor. Without those emails, it was Patrick's word against Oliver's. It was Victoria's word against Oliver's. It was a he said, she said mess. The optics justification, the specific phrase that proved his systematic intent, was the smoking gun. And it was gone. "The backups?" I asked. "The cloud backups?" "The script targeted the backup pointers too," Marcus said, looking defeated. "It corrupted the index files. It'll take weeks to try and rebuild, and even then, corruption is likely. He was thorough. He didn't just delete, he shredded." I stared at the screen, at the cascading lines of error code. Access denied, file corrupted, index missing. Oliver was going to win. He was going to walk away with a slap on the wrist for the car, claim the performance reviews were legitimate managerial decisions, and paint me as a paranoid ex-wife. Then, a memory flickered. A dusty, annoying memory from 3 years ago. "Wait," I said, my brain racing. "The legacy system, the cold storage project from the merger in 2022. Marcus stopped typing. He looked at me confused. "The Iron Mountain archives? Those are physical tapes. They're off-site." "No," I said, stepping closer to the desk. "Not the off-site tapes. The on-site shadow drive. Remember? When we migrated to Azure, Oliver complained that the new cloud interface was too slow for his massive spreadsheets. He demanded a local mirror of the HR drive be kept on the old server in the basement so he could access files offline if the internet went down." Evelyn looked at me, eyes widening. "I remember that. He threw a fit about latency." "We set up a shadow drive," I continued, the details flooding back. "A physical hard drive on the old Dell PowerEdge server in the sub-basement. It mirrors the HR drive every night at midnight. But here's the kicker. It's not connected to the main network domain. It's read only from the network. The script couldn't have wiped it because the script runs on the domain level." Marcus's jaw dropped. "The ghost drive. I thought we decommissioned that last year." "We were supposed to," I said, a grim smile forming. But Oliver refused to sign the decommissioning order because he liked having a backup he could touch. He never understood the tech. He just wanted control. That arrogance just saved us. Is it still running? Evelyn asked. There's only one way to find out, I said, grabbing my security badge. We have to go to the dungeon. The sub-basement wasn't a polished corporate space. It was the bowels of the building, concrete floors, exposed pipes, and the deafening constant drone of the massive HVAC chillers. It smelled of ozone and dust. Marcus and I burst through the double doors, Evelyn close behind us in her heels, not caring that the floor was grimy. We navigated through the maze of server racks to the far corner, where the legacy hardware lived. A graveyard of blinking lights and humming fans that were too expensive to move and too risky to turn off. There it was, Rack 42, the old Dell Power Edge. It was covered in a thin layer of gray dust, but the power light was a steady, beautiful green. Okay, Marcus said, pulling a crash cart, a monitor and keyboard on wheels, over to the rack. He plugged it directly into the server. Moment of truth. The screen flickered to life. A Windows Server 2016 login prompt appeared. Do we have the admin password? Evelyn asked, her voice tight. I do, I said. I said it. Oliver wanted the password to be HR God 2022, but I forced him to use a compliant one. He made me write it down for him, but I memorized it. I typed in the complex string of characters. Enter. The spinny circle of anxiety rotated for 5 seconds. 10. Then, the desktop appeared. I navigated to the D drive. Folder. HR Mirror. I double-clicked. The timestamp on the folder was today, 12:09 a.m. It ran, I breathed. It mirrored last night at midnight. The wipe happened at 2 p.m. today. Everything prior to midnight is here. I opened the folder. Subfolder. Communications. Subfolder. Reviews. Internal. I did a search for the keyword optics. The screen filled with results, hundreds of them, emails, memos, drafts. I opened one at random. It was an email from Oliver to the VP of Finance, dated 6 months ago. From Oliver Reynolds to Greg M. Subject bonus pool allocation. Greg, let's cap the systems engineering pool at 3%. I need to suppress the Reynolds bonus specifically. The optics of her out-earning me this year would be problematic for household dynamics, and frankly, she's a workhorse we can milk for cheap labor. She's not going anywhere. She lacks the confidence to leave. Silence in the server room. The only sound was the whir of the fans and the blood rushing in my ears. A workhorse we can milk for cheap labor. Evelyn read it over my shoulder. Her hand gripped my shoulder hard. He put it in writing. He actually put it in writing. He thought he was untouchable, I said, my voice trembling with rage. He thought this drive was just his personal safety net. He didn't realize it was his coffin. Marcus was already plugging in an encrypted external hard drive. I'm imaging the entire drive, bit-for-bit copy, admissible in court. Chain of custody starts now. I watched the progress bar creep forward. Copying files. I had him. I had everything. 2 days later, I was sitting in an office that cost more per hour than I used to make in a week. Catherine Vance didn't have a view. She had a wall of leather-bound books and a desk made of glass that looked like a jagged piece of ice. She was wearing a suit so sharp it could cut skin. Economic abuse, Catherine said, looking at the printouts of the recovered emails and the forged credit card application. She didn't look shocked. She looked like a shark smelling blood in the water. It's a relatively newer term in litigation, Allison, but the concept is ancient. He controlled your resources to limit your independence. He sabotaged your earning potential to maintain dominance. She slid the stack of papers back into a neat pile. The forged credit card is a felony. That's leverage. But the career sabotage? That's the gold mine. We can quantify that. Lost wages, lost bonuses, equity growth. We're not just suing for half the house. We're suing for the future he stole from you. I just want to be free of him, Catherine. I don't care about the money. Catherine took off her glasses and looked at me sternly. Stop saying that. That is the Allison he trained. The Allison who apologizes for taking up space. You do care about the money because the money represents your labor, your talent, and your time. He stole 3 years of your life. You are going to make him pay for every single minute at premium rates. She pushed a retainer agreement across the glass desk. The number was high, $10,000 up front. He has retained Gerald Hoffman, Catherine noted. Hoffman is a bully. He will try to paint you as unstable, vindictive, and possibly mentally ill. He will use your therapy records if he can get them. He will use your outburst about the car to claim you're erratic. I don't have therapy records, I said. Oliver wouldn't let me go. He said therapy was for weak people. Catherine raised an eyebrow. Good. One less weapon for them. But get ready, Allison. Discovery is going to be invasive. They're going to ask for everything. Your texts, your emails, your search history. They're going to try to find dirt. I'm boring, I said. I write code and I watch documentaries. Let them look. They don't need to find real dirt, Catherine warned. They just need to create enough smoke to make the judge cough. But with this... She tapped the stack of recovered emails. We have a flamethrower. Sign the papers. I signed. My hand didn't shake. The next 3 weeks were a blur of cardboard boxes and scanner lights. The discovery phase. It sounds like an adventure. It's actually just drowning in paper. I was living at Rebecca's, sleeping in her guest room on a mattress that was slightly too soft. Every night I came home from work, where people now treated me with a weird mix of awe and terror, and spent 4 hours going through old bank statements, tax returns, and digital archives. I was looking for the San Diego transfer. I knew it had happened. I knew he had intercepted it. It was 1 a.m. on a Tuesday when I found it. It wasn't in the optics folder. It was in a folder labeled Relocation MGMT. I found the email chain from 2022. From me, Corporate Relocation Team. To Allison Reynolds, intercepted, forwarded to Oliver Reynolds. Subject, offer letter. Senior Architect, San Diego HQ. Allison, we are thrilled to offer you the senior architect role in the new San Diego hub. Included is a relocation package of $25,000, a salary increase of 20%, and temporary housing in La Jolla. I felt a physical ache in my chest. La Jolla. I loved the ocean. We had talked about moving there for years. Then, the reply. Sent from my account, but time-stamped at 3 a.m. when I would have been asleep. From Allison Reynolds to Corporate Relocation Team. Subject, offer letter. Thank you for the offer, but after discussing with my husband, we have decided that the move is not right for our family at this time. I am withdrawing my application. Please do not contact me further regarding this role. He had turned down my dream. He had turned down a 20% raise. He had turned down the ocean. All because he didn't want to move away from his mother or his golf buddies, or simply because he couldn't stand the idea of me being the reason we moved. I stared at the screen, tears dripping onto my keyboard. This hurt more than the money. The money was abstract. The ocean was real. He had stolen the ocean from me. I printed the email. I added it to the evidence box. The box was getting heavy. Okay, let's try it again, Catherine said, pacing in her conference room. Mr. Hoffman asks, Mrs. Reynolds, isn't it true that you have a history of workplace conflict, specifically with Victoria Sands? I took a deep breath. My hands were clasped so tight my knuckles were white. No, Victoria and I were pitted against each other by Oliver Reynolds, who instructed us both to destabilize the other. Too defensive, Catherine snapped. Don't explain the mechanism yet. Just say, no, I have a professional relationship with Miss Sands. But he did pit us against each other. The explanation comes when I ask you questions, Allison. When Hoffman asks, you give him nothing. You give him short, boring answers. Yes, no, I don't recall. If you explain, you give him threads to pull. be a gray rock. I practiced in the mirror at Rebecca's house that night. No, I don't recall. That is incorrect. I looked at my reflection. I looked tired. Dark circles under my eyes, my hair pulled back in a severe bun. I looked like the cold, unfeeling career woman Oliver was trying to paint me as. "You look fierce," Rebecca said from the doorway, holding a pint of Ben & Jerry's. "I look dead," I corrected. "No," she said, handing me a spoon. "You look focused. You look like someone who is about to perform surgery on a tumor. It's messy, but the patient is going to survive." Am I the patient or the surgeon? Both. The courtroom smelled like floor wax and anxiety. It was smaller than I expected, beige and windowless. Oliver was already there. He sat at the defense table with Gerald Hoffman, a man who looked like a bulldog in a pinstripe suit. Oliver had changed his look. Gone were the tailored Italian suits and the arrogant posture. He was wearing a slightly ill-fitting gray sweater over a button-down shirt. His hair was messy. He hadn't shaved in 2 days. He looked sad, broken. The grieving husband. It was a costume, a calculated optics play for the judge. Judge Brennan was a stern woman with reading glasses perched on the end of her nose. She looked like she tolerated zero nonsense. Hoffman opened with his statement. He painted a picture of a tragic misunderstanding. A wife stressed by her high-pressure job, a husband trying to shield her, a car borrowed to help a needy sister. Then Oliver took the stand. "Mr. Reynolds," Hoffman asked gently, "did you intend to defraud your wife?" Oliver looked at me, a look of pure, manufactured heartbreak, then looked at the judge. "No, Your Honor, I love my wife. I've always supported her. The car, it was just a mistake. My sister was desperate. I thought Allison would understand. But she snapped. The job stress changed her. She became paranoid, controlling. She started tracking my movements, checking my emails. I think she fabricated this whole conspiracy to justify leaving me." He wiped a fake tear. "I just wanted to protect her from herself." I felt the bile rise in my throat. He was doing it again, the gaslighting, in open court. He talked about the line of credit. She asked me to sign it. She was busy with the Azure launch. She said, "Ollie, just handle it." I was doing her a favor. He was good. He was terrifyingly good. If I didn't know the truth, I might have believed him. Catherine stood up for cross-examination. She didn't look at Oliver with anger. She looked at him with boredom. "Mr. Reynolds," she began, adjusting her glasses, "you claim you supported your wife's career." "Absolutely," Oliver said, nodding earnestly. "I was her biggest cheerleader." "And you claim the line of credit was authorized by her verbally?" "Yes. She was too busy to sign." Catherine walked back to her table and picked up the heavy binder, the cold storage binder. "Let's talk about your cheerleading, Mr. Reynolds. Can you explain this email from June 2023 to the VP of Finance?" She handed a copy to the bailiff, who handed it to the judge. Hoffman got a copy. Oliver got a copy. I watched Oliver's face as he read his own words. "Frankly, she's a workhorse we can milk for cheap labor. She's not going anywhere." The color drained from his face. The sad husband mask slipped, revealing the panicked animal underneath. That's out of context," he stammered. "That was locker room talk, just business shorthand." "Business shorthand," Catherine repeated dryly. "Referring to your wife as livestock? Let's try another one." She pulled out the San Diego rejection. "Did you or did you not access your wife's email account at 3 a.m. on February 14th, 2022 to decline a job offer she never saw?" We discussed it. We decided together." "Then why did you send it from her account while she was asleep? Why is the IP address traced to your iPad, not her laptop?" And finally," Catherine said, delivering the death blow, "the credit card application. You testified she asked you to sign it." But here is a text message recovered from your deleted items, sent to your sister Chloe the day after the application was submitted. She put the text on the projector screen. Oliver to Chloe. Just secured the emergency fund. Used A's credit profile. She has no clue. If things go south, I have a $150K parachute. Don't say a word. The silence in the courtroom was absolute. Judge Brennan lowered her glasses. She looked at Oliver with an expression of profound disgust. "Mr. Reynolds," the judge said, her voice cutting through the room like a gavel, "you are under oath. Are you suggesting that parachute implies spousal consent?" Oliver opened his mouth, but no sound came out. He looked at Hoffman. Hoffman was staring at his papers, refusing to make eye contact. He knew the ship had sunk. "No further questions," Catherine said, snapping the binder shut. The judgment didn't come immediately, but when it did, it was a slaughter. Judge Brennan didn't just grant the divorce. She ruled that Oliver's actions constituted egregious economic misconduct. The House awarded 100% to me. Usually a 50-50 split, but the judge used the fraud to offset his share. The debt, the $150K line of credit, assigned entirely to Oliver. Restitution. He was ordered to pay me $135,000 in lost wages and damages for the career sabotage. Legal fees. He had to pay Catherine's bill. When the gavel came down, Oliver didn't move. He just sat there staring at the table. He was ruined. Unemployable in HR, the judgment was public record, in massive debt and homeless. I walked out of the courtroom, my legs feeling like jelly. I made it to the hallway, the same hallway where I had been terrified just months ago, and took a deep breath. "Allison!" I turned. Oliver was coming out of the doors. Hoffman had already abandoned him, rushing to his next case. Oliver looked wild. The sad husband was gone. The corporate shark was gone. He was just a desperate, angry man. "You happy?" he sneered, his voice shaking. "You took everything. The house, the money, my career. You left me with nothing." I looked at him. I looked at the gray sweater, the gray face, the gray soul. I felt nothing. No fear, no love, just a dull pity. "I didn't take anything, Oliver," I said calmly. "I just recovered what you stole. The house was paid for with my workhorse money. The career? You burned that yourself when you hit delete on the wrong server. You'll never be happy," he spat, stepping closer. "You're cold. You're a machine. That's why I managed you, because no one could ever really love a robot." It was his last attempt, his last button to push. I smiled, a real, genuine smile. "I'd rather be a happy robot alone than a miserable human being held hostage by you," I said. "Goodbye, Oliver. Don't be late for your eviction." I turned and walked toward the elevators where Catherine and Rebecca were waiting. I didn't look back. He view from the top. It's been 90 days since the gavel fell. The dust has settled, but my life looks completely different. I'm writing this from the balcony of my house. The locks are changed. The man cave is now a yoga studio server room. Don't ask, it works for me. The espresso machine Oliver loved? I sold it and bought a regular drip coffee maker. It tastes like freedom. The career. Evelyn didn't just keep me. Once the optics emails came to light, the CEO got involved. They were terrified of a lawsuit. They offered me the VP of Systems Architecture role to settle the lost wages dispute internally, on top of the court judgment. I took it. I hired Victoria as my senior project manager. We are a terrifyingly efficient team. We don't have rivalries. We have happy hours. The ex-Oliver is gone. Last I heard, he moved back in with his mother. He's working as a consultant, which I assume means he's unemployed. Chloe tried to friend request me on Instagram last week. I blocked her so hard I think I broke my screen. The twist. I went to a tech security conference in Austin last month. I was giving the keynote on data integrity and insider threats. Ironic, I know. After the speech, a guy came up to me. Julian. He's a forensic accountant who specializes in corporate fraud. He had questions about my cold storage recovery technique. He didn't ask me to smile. He didn't ask me to tone down the technical jargon. He listened to me talk about RAID arrays for 20 minutes and then said, "That is the sexiest data recovery story I've ever heard. Can I buy you a dinner that isn't expensed?" We've been out 5 times. He drives a beat-up Jeep and he thinks my ambition is hot. Yesterday I was driving the Lexus. Yes, I kept it, and yes, it drives beautifully to the grocery store. I pulled up to a stoplight. On the corner, waiting for the bus, was a guy in a wrinkled suit holding a plastic bag of groceries. It was Oliver. He looked older, tired. He was checking his phone, probably checking fantasy football, clinging to the one stat he could control. The light turned green. I didn't honk, I didn't wave, I didn't rev the engine. I just drove forward, accelerating smoothly, watching him disappear in my rearview mirror until he was just a speck. And then, nothing. I turned up the radio. The song was loud, the windows were down, and for the first time in 6 years, I was the one driving. If this story resonated with you, leave a like and consider subscribing. You can also drop any comment below, even just one word. Maybe tell me where you're watching from, or what time it is right now. Sometimes one word is enough to say you were here.